And so
Let us commence with the chapter of the weebs.
chapter.
Love anime.
Let us proceed to laugh at these weebs.
The cold wind served as a sign that we were delving further into autumn.
Do you have your ring with you, my lady?
Of course I do, Pendleton.
You have your handkerchief as well, I assume?
Not to worry, it's right here.
I'd also ask that you take this water with you. I pray this is enough to last you the day.
Thank you.
And do not expect the treats I'm sending with you this time to become routine. The Port of London is one of the most lively, prosperous regions of the country. I'm certain it will be a most educational and rewarding experience for your school trip. However...
Pendleton shot a warning glare in my direction.
For exactly the same reasons, you must be exceptionally careful at all times. Just the thought that you might end up whisked away by high waves or finding yourself on a suspicious ship destined for heaven knows where is enough to...
Oh no! Just look at the time. I really must be getting back to school.
Then let us be off at once.
After escaping Pendleton's lecture, I climbed into the carriage and we set off for the port. The area where we were headed, the Port of London, as Pendleton mentioned, was an area slightly east of the city, facing onto the sea. Despite the name, it isn't simply a place that ships go in and out of. Large ships are also built there, and it's filled with rows upon rows of red brick warehouses. Beautiful, white beaches that glisten in the sunlight, and peaceful waves that calm your heart. I rarely had the chance to visit the sea. I'd been looking forward to the day for some time, building up a pristine image of what this particular one might be like based on the books I had read. To my woes, reality desired to not be quite so pristine.
Are you sure you're alright, Emily?
I can handle myself, Watson. Promise, you need to keep asking.
If you insist.
You weren't the only one who fell, if it helps. Lupine had a spectacular fall earlier.
It would help more if we moved on from what happened.
If you feel as though you're going to fall again because of the wind, grab hold of me or someone else, alright?
I will. Thank you. I wasn't expecting the wind here to be so strong. Goodness.
Listen in, class. As I'm sure you have noticed, the
I'll have him
sea
record
is
his class
so
later.
terribly
Okay, good.
unsettled today that
I'm like,
not
there's no one
even
else that should do that.
sailors can bring themselves to sing their merry songs.
Mr. Mackenzie howled over the wind as best he could, seemingly in a state where he could be easily carried off by the weather at any moment.
I want you to take great care not to be dragged into the sea. Just as well, I'd prefer if you not fall into this here gutter. It has sewage flowing through it, so it would not end well.
Hello? Test.
Mr. Mackenzie, Lupine has gone crashing to the ground in a poor effort to avoid his spectacles being blown off. Would it be alright for her to lend him a hand?
Of course. Please do, Holmes.
As Holmes helped Lupine back to his feet, another strong gust threatened the class. Shan't let the wind take me! Not a second time! So I declared heartily within, but to see how even large objects caved to the wind frightened me. And what of that awful gutter? I could fall in and never be heard from again! Eek!
Whoa!
I'd lost my balance, but with Watson supporting me, I was able to at least avoid falling to the ground. Thank you, Watson.
It's no trouble. Keep a tight hold of me.
I will. I still felt a bit unsteady on my feet, and before I knew it, I was clinging to Watson's arm with a strength I never knew I had. I do apologize for this, Watson. I declared I could handle myself, but here I am.
No! No! Nonsense, Emily. You're smaller and lighter than me, I should say. It's smart for you to be anxious. Haven't a thing to fear so long as you're with me. I'll support you.
That's very sweet of you, Watson. The wind was continuing to rap upon us with all the ferocity of a hurricane. Yet to see the assistant's smile brought me to a second wind of relaxation.
A moment, Holmes.
Yes, Ms. Marple? You look less than pleased.
I might suggest that you put your man on a lead.
I don't understand. Has Watson done something untold?
Indeed, he has. You see the way he behaves, like his actions are for Emily's benefit. He's being too bold. His back brings to mind watching a big, excitable dog wagging its tail. She clings to him, and he makes no effort to hide being charmed. It's an utter lack of discipline on your part.
I take it your bringing this up means you're envious.
Who knows? I'm certainly not happy about it.
In due time, the weather made to ease itself, and I was finally able to stand without assistance. Thank you again, Watson. I'm so glad you were there for me.
You don't need to thank me. It's just... I was happy to have you rely on me.
Pardon?
Never mind.
All of us students having calmed down, Mr. Mackenzie once more opened his mouth to speak.
Now, the port of London has a large number of ships from abroad docked in it. Most ships come here legally, but there are some that come here smuggling such goods as illegal drugs and expensive tea. In recent years, there have been cases of not only illegal substances being smuggled into the country, but people as well. It's become quite the conundrum. Sir, Jack appears to have wandered off in the direction of that steamship. Does he have permission to do that?
Lupine was right. Jack's eyes were fascinatedly fixed on the ship rocking in the waters and, somewhat stealthily, had slowly edged himself closer to it.
It's massive.
Wait right where you are, Mr. Millers. Everyone needs to stay together on class trips. You mustn't go wandering off on your own. Please.
As we walked from the harbor towards the warehouses, a certain ship had caught my eye also. I wonder what kind that one is. and amongst all the other ships docked on the bay was one that appeared unusually worn.
Is something the matter, Miss Whiteley? Why you stopped walking?
It strikes me as suspicious. That couldn't be one of the smuggling ships Mr. Mackenzie mentioned, could it?
Wait, Emily, where are you going?
God help me. She's hopeless. Come, Watson. We're going after her.
Right.
If you're not back within 10 minutes, I'll let Mr. Mackenzie know the situation.
Not to worry, we'll be back well before then.
I'll believe that when I see it. I would be quite astonished if you returned with her before those 10 minutes are up.
Having approached the suspicious ship as close as I felt comfortable, I then hid out of the way and surveyed it from afar. People were disembarking in large numbers before my eyes, carrying goods off the ship with it. What worried me was that a number of them didn't seem to be in very good health. As if they barely had the energy to spare, they were collapsing or sitting on the ground as soon as they reached dry land. I feel like I should be calling a doctor more than Scotland Yard. Where on earth could this ship be from? So many of them have black hair. My mind was churning as I observed. I was startled by two faces popping before me. Their appearances was so unexpected that I hadn't much time to react with anything more than a pitiful cry.
Dirge?
Who is she? She seems to have been watching us.
It's like an ordinary girl to me. Well, ordinary as far as here. I'm sure. Never seen a real blonde-haired, blue-eyed beauty in my life.
I've no idea what they're saying. What language is that? Before me was a petite boy with chestnut hair, staring at me with eyes as generously large as his grin. Next to him stood a slender, silver-haired boy wearing spectacles. Far from the gaiety of his partner, he gave me the immediate impression of being a cautious sort. And whatever language they were speaking, I wasn't familiar with a single word of it.
She has blonde hair and blue eyes, yes, but I think it's premature to be declaring her a beauty.
So you say, but I'd wager you thought she's a fine sight for sore eyes the second you spotted her.
I think that such a mundane idea would even cross my mind with the circumstances as they are. Then you don't know me very well.
What could they be talking about? They couldn't be talking about how to get rid of me now that I've witnessed them sneaking onto the country, could they? To add fuel to the fire of my worries, the silver-haired one had a foreign weapon at his waist. Was I to be on the receiving end of that? To suspect this alone made me gulp.
Hi there, are you alright? You look as white as a sheet.
Oh? Well, that I understood well enough. What does shock? You know English?
Sure do. Can hold the conversation as well as the next. Did you see that? She understood me. She understood me, Ken-chan.
I did, yes. More importantly, how many more must I tell you before? How many more times must I tell you to stop calling me Ken-chan before you understand that?
Ken-chan?
There isn't a soul alive who would treat me with proper respect upon hearing that juvenile nickname, and that will not do. Start calling me Akechi immediately.
Sorry, Akechi. Old habits die hard.
I'll expect you rein in those habits with more care in the future. So, who might you be?
Oh. The silver-haired boy began speaking in equally fluent English, surprising me yet again.
Have you some business with our ship, or someone on it? We could hardly help you, but notice you've been watching it for some time now.
Well, if I lie here and they notice, they'll surely waste no time tossing me into the sea. No, anything but the sea! All those fish could eat me, and the sewage. I couldn't bear to think of the gutter at a time like this.
Lest there be any misunderstanding, I would note we arrived here legally after fulfilling all conditions required under the law. Will you stop staring at us as though we are criminals?
So you are allowed to be here? This, I came to realize immediately, was an incorrect way to word my concern.
We are! Your country opened its doors to us! What a lousy thing to say to someone you've just met! I hope all English people aren't as rude as you!
Be calm, Kobayashi.
Kan-chan.
No but. And need I remind you that I told you to call me by my proper name? This is the reality of being Japanese in the modern world. As long as we're in this country, we must know our place.
Japanese must mean you're from Japan, I think? Now that I was able to calm down and think properly, I recall there being a country in the Far East that commonly referred to England as English. Isn't Japan a faraway island, and they came all that way on a boat? One more quick glance at their faces and the idea was plausible enough, though every feature was wrecked with exhaustion. I can only imagine the hardships they must have endured to make it here. And to think I asked them if they were allowed! I assumed them to be criminals as soon as they hit dry land. The guilt was building the further my thoughts went. I'm terribly sorry. I should never have said it. Oh, it was awful of me. I just received a lesson on smugglers and those entering the country illegally. I let my imagination run wild, I suppose.
Lesson? Are you a student?
Yes, I am.
A woman and a student? Then you must be of noble birth, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's right. My name is Emily Whiteley. It is a pleasure to meet you. I raised the edges of my skirt slightly and presented my most refined curtsy.
Ow! So this is how they greet each other over here in the West. It's so elegant.
Why, thank you. Unlike his smaller companion, the bespectacled boy continued staring in silence. I've perhaps not done something to insult you, have I?
No, not at all.
Don't mind him. He's stuck dumb by how pretty you are.
That's enough from you. Still, you've given your name. It's only proper we give ours. I am Kenichiro Akechi. The noisy one with me is Seiji Kobayashi.
Well then, Kobayashi and Ken-chan, it's lovely to meet you.
That's us! Good to meet you!
I believe I introduced myself with my full name. How did you pick that up? I don't recall using it.
Was that not it? I thought I heard the word being repeated towards you earlier.
Be that as it may, I would rather you call me by my surname, Akechi.
Oh, is there a special reason, perhaps?
Well, that's because...
Because over in Japan, using someone's first name means you're very close with one another. He'll go beat Red in the face if he hears you using his name coming from a girl.
Stop making up falsehoods. I simply want to be treated with respect by those around me.
Kenj, Akechi wasted no time in rejecting Kobayashi's theory.
Gotta say, Glitch is so progressive. It never occurred to me that women would be studying alongside men here.
Does everyone study together?
Yes, I suppose we do. I'm a student in the detectives course at Heritage Academy. There are both boys and
You lot away!
What's happened?
Ron, Scotland Yard will be here any minute. Leave the goods. We need to save our own issues.
A large group of men begin piling off the ship next to Akechi and Kobayashi's, each of their faces filled with desperation.
I thought as much. There is something to be said for English police force to be this widely feared.
What? I jumped up in surprise at the yelp from beside me.
Damn it all, out of the way, now!
The men continued scrabbling away from their ship, taking cargo haphazardly out of their way as they did. That wasn't the only thing they were kicking away to and fro. The foreigners from the other ships were given the same exact treatment if they happened to be in their path.
What do you think you're doing? What sort of men attack people who haven't had enough strength to fight back? You cowards!
Kobayashi, think before you act.
Seeing as he clearly wasn't the type to do just that, he also didn't seem the type to listen, and I was right. He sprinted right in front of the men, refusing to let them pass.
Stand aside, brat, unless you won't end up swimming into fishes. Try it if you dare, but you'll be the ones taking a swim.
His words were menacing, but the size difference between the petite boy and the Englishman was readily apparent. They looked like they could knock him aside with ease. I don't know if there's anything I can do. At this rate, he'll...
Suppose I'll need to step in.
Akechi grasped the weapon at his waist.
Stay here, miss.
Akechi! He ignored me and followed in Kobayashi's footsteps, jumping before the men.
Sorry, Akechi, but you'll have to save the lecture for another time.
The two of them stood with their backs to one another. In Akechi's hands was his sword, whilst Kobayashi wielded a slingshot.
They've got no idea how much suffering we've endured to get here.
That still isn't a good enough reason to lash out at them.
Aren't you frustrated to have this happen first thing?
If I weren't, would I be standing here with you?
Akechi initially carried a look of resignation, but after adjusting his spectacles, his gaze sharpened. He returned his hand to his sword.
You're to assist me, Kobayashi.
Got it! You'll be crying to your bleeding mummies after we're finished with you!
The men raised their knives and charged at the boys. They were hoping for a swift defeat before fleeing.
You'll be the ones crying when we've routed the lot of you!
I'll leave those I don't manage to defeat to you.
That suits me!
They then shot into motion. Akechi's blade cleaved in a sideways arc before him.
Gah! Gah!
The smugglers fell to the ground one by one. Each of their faces were etched with disbelief. What? What did I just see? Akechi's counterattack was so swift, I had to strain my eyes to convince myself of what was happening. He waited for his opponent to attack. Then just before they could, he was right before them and ready to strike. Seizing the opening, the hilt of his blade would make contact with their abdomen, the back of their neck, or other similar exposed parts. By the time his blow had connected with his opponent, he was ready for the next. His movements were simply too fast for any of the smugglers to keep up with. My, this is more akin to dancing than fighting. Even standing a fair distance away and having a clear view of the action, I could only just avoid losing sight of him. His attack struck with such force that the majority fell to their knees in agony, rendered unavailable to move. There were a few who endured the pain for long enough to rise to their feet, but they were not prepared for this.
Damn you! Wish we could make this easier on you, but we ate all the beans and seeds we had during the trip here. You'll have to make do being pelted with these stones. Gah!
These men, too, were quickly sent flying back to the ground by Kobayashi's slingshot. Together, the two of them made a perfect team, with Akechi serving as the vanguard and Kobayashi assisting him. It took little time between them for all the smugglers to be at their complete mercy.
Bloody hell! Who are you?
I have no names to give to the likes of you.
Akechi gently slid his weapon back into its sheath. His stance was so elegant that he wouldn't have looked out of place at a high-class social gathering. I'm stunned. They fought so many men without any outside help. Effortlessly at that.
Did it, Akechi?
Kobayashi ran joyously towards... How is... Akechi?
Akechi.
Joyously.
Yeah,
Okay.
Akechi.
Kobayashi ran joyously over towards Akechi, and with apt timing, more were to join us in our celebration.
Miss Whiteley.
Two of my schoolmates arrived to see to it that I was well. Holmes, Watson.
Truly, you are a marvel. Did Mr. Mackenzie not warn us against wandering off alone? I fear your brain would be the one puzzle and I'll be able to solve, not that I want to.
I hope you two haven't fretted too much over me. You've not been searching for me all this time, have you? Really, I didn't intend for there to be so much fuss.
Oh, there was no fussing at all. I assure you. Your actions are oh so unpredictable. They inspire incredulousness more than worry.
There's no need to hide your relief. Just say you fussed plenty. You were worried she'd become caught in something after all Mr. Mackenzie said earlier. I certainly was.
Bah. Speaking of which, what's all this about?
Holmes' eyes were focused on the veritable sea of collapsed smugglers. A large group of smugglers were trying to flee when two boys from Japan, to the east, decided to stop them. They routed them all like it was no troubles at all. It was a spectacular sight.
Routed?
It means they were overwhelmingly bested, Watson.
We must help them retrieve the cargo that fell into the sea, thanks.
Wait! Why? We've only just arrived.
But we shan't turn our backs on people in need,
Oh. We're in for the lecture of the century from Mr. Mackenzie when we get back. Still, I can't say I disagree. Let's get helping. I see a few injured people over there. Ask if there's anything I can do for them.
I don't have a choice in this, do I?
Thank you, dears. Together, we assisted in retrieving the cargo the smugglers had knocked into the sea back to dry land. Watson, meanwhile, did his part in giving treatment to those who possessed injuries, however small they happened to be. Upon the yard's arrival, who had been informed of the smugglers' presence, the smugglers were left with no other position but to be taken into custody.
We're in your debt for your assistance in this matter. That gang's been a nuisance for quite some time. They've made a name for themselves bringing drugs into the country, but known as they were, we could not catch hide nor hair of them. So when someone from that ship that arrived in the country reported they'd been seen, we thought it must be some mistake. But thanks to the three of you, they evade capture no longer. Well done.
He's making it sound like we were the ones who did the work.
I'd heard Harrington students were visiting as part of a trip, but then you solve a crime we've been investigating for ages while you're at it. Your school bleeds its reputation.
There appears to be some confusion, sir. We're not the ones responsible for this.
All we did was help the people who suffered their hands. By the time the two of us arrived, we were already apprehended.
Now, no need to be so modest. We'll be certain to let your school know what you did here today.
Sir, he's telling the truth. The ones responsible were those two over there. As I was about to tell the man about Akechi and Kobayashi, the second officer, whose tone was a dramatic shift from light to dark compared to the first, addressed them directly.
Dirge, go for it.
Off with you then. Scotland Yard will be carrying a formal investigation here. We shan't have you. We shan't have your sword getting in the way. What? But we're the ones who captured those men. Are we to believe your tall tales? What could a couple of feeble yellow monkeys do against hardened criminals? This is no place for you filthy Jannies to be about.
How can he talk down like that to them?
I saying that again. What do you know about us? You can't even say what we are, right? We're Japanese, not Janese.
Kobayashi.
The boy went to strike the officer with a clenched fist, but Akechi grabbed him by the shoulders and forced him back.
Damn it! Let me go! Let me go!
Have you forgotten why we came here? We didn't come all this way to quarrel with law enforcement.
Others from their ship began to leave, and so Akechi forced the still furious Kobayashi to join him to break the tension. Much to my disturbance, they continued to receive unwelcome glares from the officers and bystanders, who happened to meander close enough to survey the commotion. Akechi, Kobayashi. My darkening train of thought was only broken by a sigh from Holmes.
Miss Whiteley, wish to go after them? Do so quickly.
Pardon?
Given the speed you walk, if you wait much longer, you're going to lose sight of them. You have to give your weight and apologies to the teacher and the schoolmates upon your return. I don't see that being enough to deter you from running off for the present.
Holmes?
He's right. Go on. We'll be waiting here for you.
Watson? Thank you, boys. I shall be back soon. I hurried off after Akechi and Kobayashi.
Watson?
Sorry about that. Just got a phone call. You made it sound like she's the only one. We'll have to give her weight and apologies, but I have a feeling that was as much for you as it was for her.
And you, Watson?
Help with the cargo and the injured. We're both waist deep in this situation as it is, so why not keep at it till we're up to the neck? Now, what excuse are we best off using?
I'm not certain. Conjuring up some elaborate lies is the best plan. Miss Whiteley is a right terrible actress. All it takes is her opening her mouth for our story to unravel.
I wish I could argue otherwise. The truth it is, then.
Akechi! Kobayashi!
Miss?
Miss Emily?
Is there any reason you've chased after us?
Akechi and Kobayashi were walking alongside the others, but they stopped once I called out to them. Am I correct in assuming that you two were the ones who first reported that smuggler ship?
What makes you think that?
From how I saw it, it was like you expected the yard to arrive. Then there's how we first met. Your companions on the ship were still unloading cargo at the time, but you weren't. You were doing so moments before, so I doubt you didn't care for the labor. That's why it struck me as odd. The only plausible answer is that you two were keeping watch.
Well, what a clever deduction. You're like a real detective, Emily.
By chance, there happened to be an article about them in the English newspaper I was reading on the boat here. It mentioned that their members sport a tattoo resembling a snake on the back of their hands.
I was lost as ever when Akechi decided... Excuse me. I was lost as ever when Akechi decided to borrow my telescope after we'd landed. He didn't have any reason to look for land in the distance, so I thought he'd gone nuts from exhaustion.
That's rather unkind of you to think. I simply found the crewmen of the ship next to ours peculiar in their behavior. They were only waiting to leave port, and yet they were much too wary, as if they were ready for battle at any moment. After the backs of their hands confirmed my theory, I asked the person who disembarked first for the port entry procedures to report them.
And you did that immediately? I was moved. Between his powers of observation and quick thinking, why, he was the one who made for quite the detective. They ought to have earned praise for their good deeds, but those policemen only heard abuse. How can that be right? Oh, as though it could ever be right. If it's no trouble, I should like to speak intimately. I'm honored you came all the way here from Japan. Welcome to England. I presented the water and custard tart Pendleton had given me that morning to them. I'd been keeping my custard tart aside to eat later. It was always a treat to have. I'd been looking forward to eating it all day. How queer that something I would have delighted in having for myself still felt inadequate offering. Rather than take it, however, the two scrutinized the gift as though it was absolutely foreign to them.
Is this edible?
Oh, it's called a custard tarts. They're deliciously sweet desserts.
Sweet?
Kobayashi alighted to the extent that his eyes may as well have been glittering with stars.
You don't mind if we eat this?
In fact, it would please me very much if you did.
Kobayashi, it's unbecoming for a man to be so enthused with
I get first bite!
Never mind.
The taste is amazing, Emily. You're right. It's sweet, but it's not the same type of sweet you get from Monaka.
It was prepared by my family's butler. Don't expect to find many in London that are quite so perfect.
Really? And you still let us have it? Thank you.
Akechi had been watching us with a somewhat dubious expression before he spoke up.
When I chose to set sail for this foreign land, I was prepared for how I would likely to be treated here. After all, our nation's position is rather perilous. One wrong move and we become yet another colony for the West. If I'm honest, the treatment we received earlier came as no surprise to me.
Akechi?
What has come to as a surprise, however, is meeting someone like you so soon after our arrival. The journey here was an ordeal from start to finish, but I count myself fortunate for being able to meet you at the end of it.
For the first time, Akechi's mouth curled ever so slightly, and his eyes softened in what felt like his sincerest smile. The change was only visible for a mere moment, but I was captivated all the same. A great change would be coming to the classroom a few days after the trip. On the way to our classroom, I bumped into Marple along the corridor and called out to her. Excuse me, Marple? I wanted to apologize for worrying you at the port. I wasn't thinking.
You did worry me, but I cannot be upset after seeing her still in good health. That's all that matters to me. That being said, it isn't often one gets to witness you, Holmes, and Watson apologizing so desperately as a trio. Holmes especially. Watching him grovel is a treat worth savoring.
So you're used to me and Watson apologizing?
Class was thrilled to witness such a rare spectacle.
I'm pleased you've all found the sight so worth seeing. Perhaps I should begin charging for the privilege in the future.
You're a funny one, Holmes. He'll never have to charge again unless you do something else that warrants an apology.
Something about hearing that from you makes my blood boil.
Simmer down, then. You're great, though. Always so often a cut above the rest. It was a treat to see you misbehave.
Your standards of normal are skewed by how often you get told off for forgetting homework and falling asleep during class.
Class, please take your seats.
Mr. Mackenzie's voice had been hoarse since the trip, likely owing to how the poor man had to shout for hours on end. His appearance was pitiable enough at the best of times, so adding that weak texture made him seem orders of magnitude more so than ever.
First, I need to introduce 2 foreign exchange students who will be joining us from today. Come in.
Oh. The second I saw these new students, I was almost pleasantly speechless. Akechi! Kobayashi!
So this is your class!
Lower your voice. Kobayashi.
Oh, come on. Don't pretend you're not happy to see her.
All I implied is that shouting personal matters in the classroom is inappropriate.
So you are happy.
One was naturally brimming with energy from ear to ear, whilst the other defaulted to being reserved. They couldn't have been more different.
I want you to stay quiet till I give you permission to speak, Kobayashi. Excuse the lengthy interruption, Mr. Mackenzie. Do continue.
Certainly. This is Kenichiru Akechi and Seiji Kobayashi. They've traveled here from distant Japan.
As soon as he mentioned where they were from, the classroom erupted with curious whispering and admiring sighs.
They were to be in someone else's care for the duration of their stay, but tragically, that person passed away of illness before they could make it here. But in light of their achievements shortly after their arrival, our academy has chosen to take them under its wing.
So it's all come together. When we went to give our apologies to the teacher, I reported every possible detail I could recall regarding the incident with the smuggler's ship. That, of course, included Akechi and Kobayashi's involvement. I'm so pleased you took the time to find and enroll them here. Good show, Mr. Mackenzie. I always knew he was the head of our course for a reason. For a brief moment, the lanky, wearied figure of Mr. Mackenzie seemed almost dazzling. Almost.
It may take them time to adjust to a new environment and culture. I ask that you do what you can to make them feel welcome. Now, there are 2 empty seats waiting for you. Sit down, gentlemen, if you would.
Before that, sir, I have a favor I wish to ask of you.
Oh? What might that be, Mr. Akechi?
Would it be too brazen to request being appointed as our class representative? I'm sorry.
This, coming from the mysterious new addition, had all the attention. Holmes, could I ask you something?
No need. I know exactly what you'll say. I'd like to know if we have such a position to fill, correct?
Precisely. You read my mind.
As far as I'm aware, was one. But, you see, the detective's course has always had its share of colorful characters. Making it a nasty job to unite as one. Anyone who's tried hasn't lasted long.
In short, the position does exist, but may as well not.
I hope that was a joke, Akechi.
Akechi's request had come when Kobayashi was ready to take his seat. For some reason unknown to the rest of us, he visibly despaired at the thought.
I would never make a joke of this. We came to English to further the development of our homeland. To that end, we must use the limited time afforded to us to learn and better ourselves as much as possible and taking the leisure route of studying like any other student. Why, that's simply not enough. We must constantly strive to undertake greater responsibility, to achieve greater things, to expand our efforts beyond the bare minimum. It is, I declare, almost vital I assume the position of leadership.
Akechi took no notice of the astonishment from those around him. His proclamation was indeed brazen. To use his wording, but he fully intended to stand by it.
Fantastic. Oh, fantastic. This is giving everyone a fine first impression of us. I can feel the headache coming already. I understand how you are, but I don't suppose you could tone down your enthusiasm for the first day? Everyone's sure to think that we're all like this.
Duck, you do him.
Look at that! I've never seen such determination. Oh, but it only feels right for a man who's trekked here all the way from the Far East to be so different to the average student.
Greg.
Absolutely, he's the same age as us, but here he is, shouldering the future of his country like it's the natural thing to do. It's inspiring.
To what?
Holmes.
His voice carried throughout the classroom.
I've heard you are effectively the detective who represents this class, as well as that you possess a ring for Her Majesty for your abilities. As one who aspires to become a first-rate detective, it is a true privilege to meet you.
Dear me, he can't be very ordinary if he's already latched onto home.
I'll say, no one close to ordinary would engage with our most baffling schoolmate.
Me? Baffling? Ha! You speak nonsense. There's nothing wrong with closely inspecting or being alert of one's surroundings. It helps me to notice evidence far more acutely than average citizen.
And here he is with a matter-of-fact quip. Those two may be quite similar, come to think of it. Holmes had earned himself a fair amount of stares right along with our foreign exchange student.
I'm pleased to meet you as well, Akechi.
If I may, I want to make something very clear to you, Holmes. Take that! I will not lose to you. You're the best here as we speak, but there will come a time where I become first-rate detective and claim your place, mark my words.
Will you now? May I counter? If becoming a first-rate detective is your aim, then don't chase someone else's shadow to get there. Take that! You follow your own path as I do. Spend enough time musing over wins and losses, and you may become so self-involved that you lose sight of the finish line.
Is that so? Am I to interpret that a detective aims not to best others, but to be unprecedented in their own right?
Interpret my words as you wish.
Haha, I'm impressed anew. I throw down the gauntlet, and your retort is to give me advice. I see, a first-rate detective must also be a first-rate British gentleman. Another lesson I well learnt.
Akechi swiftly produced a notebook and began to scribble away. Did that not pick up?
No, it did. It's just that my controller turned itself off for some reason.
It's hard to say if he's an optimist or if he truly doesn't realize Holmes meant nothing from that.
Oh, you don't know half of it. You won't find another man as smart as he is simple. And I do mean simple.
I wouldn't take it that far.
No, listen. You can't get a recipe more basic than Akechi. The first ingredient, his studies. The second, his diplomacy. Physical training is enough to be third and fourth. Then there's the most important one of all, his spectacles.
Why those?
Gotcha! I've never met anyone else so humorless. Absolutely not a single funny bone to be found in his body. You know what makes him simple? Work! What makes him smile? Work! He's a slave to productivity.
So he's too diligent.
I'm not a slave to anything, Kobayashi. And I do hope that you'll excuse my borrowing your notebook.
It's one of my 7 tools! You shouldn't be using it!
You should never let your guard down, not even for a moment. Let this be a lesson to further your studies.
Even across the ocean, you would spring trouble on others in the name of education.
I find his devotion to bettering himself quite admirable.
Yes, but this sounds less like devotion and more like obsession. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And if I may, I think you're all forgetting one sorely important detail.
Marple sharply changed the subject to grab our attention, and then announced in a dignified manner.
Objection! We do have a detective without peer in our class, but it isn't Holmes. It's Emily Whiteley.
What?
Oh,
You're right, I did forget.
told us you were such a legend, Emily.
She overstates my capabilities. I swear it. I'm nowhere near being without peer.
When we first met, your energy and behavior piqued my interest. Now I see how exceptionally modest you are as well. They say that all that glitters is not gold, but you shimmer more with every revelation.
I shimmer? I fear I don't understand.
To put it more concisely, you're saying that the truly capable do not flaunt their talents. They behave as I do.
As you do? Oh, I'm sure.
I'll admit that what Ms. Marple says is correct. Akechi, she does occasionally possess moments of brilliance to surpass even my intellect. I do stress occasional, but I have seen it happen.
Would you look at that? Holmes praised someone, reluctantly, but I heard it with my own ears.
These moments must truly be exceptional if someone such as you accepts them as brilliance. Perhaps it's a regular occurrence in my country ruled by a queen, but I'm moved by how the women here excel.
Seemingly inspired, Akechi once again began scribbling the borrowed notebook.
This is a nation ruled by Her Majesty, and filled with refined ladies and gentlemen. Would it be fair to assume this enriching lifestyle is more the rule than the exception for young British women?
Quite fair. The concept of ladies first is bred into our culture. We must always extend a kind hand towards women.
Extend a kind hand.
It's indubitably important to understand how they think. We gentlemen can't very well extend our hand without knowing when to take lead, as I'm sure you realize.
Men have to understand how women think and lead the way.
As soon as the opportunity presents itself, men have to strike with all their might. Strike, then conquer. Man must defend his prize to the very end.
Strike, conquer, and defend. Well, I wasn't aware there were so many complex strategies lurking beneath the surface.
Is this still about women? Why must it be so violent?
Oh, it's absolutely complex. No man simply wants for the girl of his dreams. He puts in all the effort he can muster to win her heart.
Might I suggest we do something about those two?
I'm sure the ladies first is more about putting women, well, first, and less about how to get them to fall in love with you.
Selecting which information is likely to be vital is an important part of being a detective. If I may add, if he can't do that, he has a long way to go.
Wonderful, wonderful. Ambition and enthusiasm are always two qualities I love to see in a student. Very well, Akechi. I'm happy to appoint you as our new class representative. I have high hopes for you.
Thank you, Mr. Mackenzie.
After they had been welcomed into class, I volunteered to show the two of them round the academy. From what I've been told, they were to live in the boys' dormitory for the duration of their stay.
Nika,
Okay. Aren't those the new foreign students?
Calais.
Why, yes. It's so exciting to have Orientals in attendance. The pale-haired one with the spectacles looks ever so smart, doesn't he?
Find the one with the dark hair to be most endearing of the two. I may well be tempted to scoop him out and take him home with me.
Kobayashi made an exerted effort to pout more with every comment overheard.
The place is full of unusual people, isn't it?
Narfi will be right back. He went to go use the bathroom.
Very well.
Did I leave right as I came up?
You're fine.
And yet I suspect there are none among them who would want to hear as much from a foreigner.
By the way, it was a real surprise to run into you two again, and an even greater surprise to learn you both want to be detectives.
Surprised as you! We were at a complete loss on what to do before Mr. Mackenzie contacted us. We were told he persuaded all the higher-ups here to let us... We were told he persuaded all the higher-ups here to let us enroll.
It was thanks to you, I might add. We owe you a debt of gratitude.
You don't owe me anything. The only thing I did was tell him what happened at the port. You're reaping the rewards of your own actions.
I see. Thank you.
Akechi awkwardly averted his gaze. By the by, I meant to ask this before, but isn't Japan far away? What inspired you to come all the way to London?
It's very far, yes. To give you a bit of background, our motherland resumed communicating with the outside world roughly 40 years ago. Before that, the nation had been isolated, and interacting with other nations was strictly forbidden.
As Akechi explained, Kobayashi stopped surveying the area and jumped into the conversation.
One result of our isolationism was becoming painfully aware of how far behind we were once we resumed relations with the other countries. This inspired Japan to rework our system into that of an industrial one, with laws based on constitutions of the West. Our justice system, which had long been unfairly weighted to suit the upper classes, was also reformed. I think.
You think rightly. I'm pleased you remembered.
How could I forget after all those lectures I sat through on the boat? Ugh.
Things are yet to be perfect, of course. There's no end to the crimes taking place in the shadows. If anything, they're more horrific now than they ever were before.
Akechi continued.
Engelsch saw the beginning of the Industrial Revolution and has been at the forefront of the modernization that has occurred ever since. My aim has been to come here, gain the means to fight against and oppose the crimes of my nation, and return home a fine detective. I should then like to continue using the abilities I've gained in service for my country.
It's the same for me. I want to become a detective like Akechi.
Have you been friends for a while then?
Not by choice, I assure you.
It's not a very nice way to speak of our ever so reliable assistant.
A reliable assistant proves their worth through using their actions over words of self-praise. As you are aware of how much of my time I spend cleaning up after you, because you keep running headfirst into one altercation after the next.
Don't turn this around on me. Are you aware of how much I clean up after you because you can't be asked to take proper care of yourself? Once something's caught your eye, even food and sleep are cast to the back of your mind. Think about the poor chap who's got to turn to violence to keep you in check.
Violence?
We have an agreement wherein if Kobayashi is able to defeat me, I will obey him. Even mounting a surprise attack is acceptable. I consider this a part of his training.
Kobayashi soured at Akechi's frankness.
It's more than that. Who can best someone who dedicates all hours of night into training? No, it's not training. I'm not training. I'm on a bloody fool's errand.
Yet another duo of detectives, but they could not be more different to Holmes and Watson.
And I do hope I'm wrong, Akechi. But in case I'm not, please show mercy on your schoolmates as class representative. Please?
I thought you knew me better than that.
Phew, that's a relief. I had to believe that even you wouldn't go around telling people off for little things on your first day.
But of course I would. Starting off on the right foot is vitally important in these kinds of matters. Nothing good comes from pampering people.
Oh, right.
Errors must be pointed out, and points of improvement plainly declared. Failing to do so would be neither your nor the other person's benefit.
If you must, but try not to be too aggressive about it.
Akechi is an interesting one. He may have us all set to task in no time. Didn't take long for me to learn how to spot on my first It didn't take long for me to learn how spot on my first impression was. It was only until our next lesson together, in fact.
Watson, it's a terrible thing to forget your homework. Don't dig yourself a deeper hole by following through with such an insincere apology.
I'm sorry.
As for you, Gordon, you are here to be educated by some of the country's most brilliant. Why dress so slovenly for this honor? Sort yourself out at once.
Pardon me.
Lupine, You ought to learn to handle that ring with more care. You're a detective. It's time for you were aware of it.
Not the tiniest indiscretion gets past him. I could believe he has eyes at the back of his head.
That's enough, Akechi. How is Mr. Underwood meant to teach us anything if you spend the entire class nitpicking at every little thing? You aren't helping!
I don't see how he could teach you at all when you don't even care to take out your textbook, Kobayashi.
Yes, well, I was just about to take it out before you said anything.
Laughing awkwardly, he started rooting through his bag for his textbook. Watching Akechi, I had a certain feeling about him. Let's just be nice and say he's amazing. I found him even more amazing than I initially thought. He knew everything there was to know about the class. How could he, on just his first day? His wit was to be commended. I couldn't help but be thoroughly dazzled. This isn't good. An uncomfortable desire to sleep had overtaken me since lunch. As the minutes passed, it became more and more difficult to fight off. My eyelids are so heavy.
And Mr. Underwood? If you've the time to gossip about you and your wife's indolence, you'd best put up with that with what little energy you have left into putting out your students' shortcomings before carrying on with our lesson.
Duck.
What indolence? I was only describing our honeymoon.
Oh boy, now he looks as drained of energy as Mr. Mackenzie.
And that's hardly Akechi's fault. I think he's saying is the truth.
Can't disagree, but he could let us down gently. Excuse me, Emily? Can't be the only one who thinks Akechi's behavior is a bit excessive, can I? Hello, Emily? Uh-oh. Good lord.
I somehow managed to sleep the entire lesson away. Oh, drat! I can't believe I did that!
Miss Whiteley.
Akechi, that really wasn't my intention. It was just too difficult to resist the temptation.
I didn't come over here to hear excuses. I came to ask you a question. Are you here with the intention to study hard and become a detective?
Of course. Although I'll admit that my catnap would suggest otherwise. I wish to become a first-rate detective, the best of the best.
Then you shouldn't have free time for dilly-dallying whilst in class.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Indeed, I could not disagree. How could I argue with sleeping during lessons?
There's no need to be so harsh. You've done more than enough forcing your opinion down others' throats for one day. It's not right.
I'm not angry, if that's your worry, nor am I attempting to force my opinions onto her. That being said, Miss Whiteley, do you not find your actions wasteful?
In what way?
You live in a country where a woman's position in society is formally recognized, and your talents are similarly acknowledged by your peers. Rather than try to polish those talents, you allow them to go stagnant with a smile. I can hardly think of a more frustrating waste. Especially as there are many in this world who fruitlessly strive with all their heart to have their abilities recognized.
Akechi?
I'm also of the opinion that you would do well not to betray the expectations placed upon you by as your Queen's detective.
It's true. I couldn't agree more. Should I permit myself complacency and forego working to better myself? Where does that leave the trust Her Majesty has on me? Akechi's chiding had spoken to me on some level, giving me a renewed feeling of motivation. Bless you, Akechi. Akechi, I feel I can do just about anything now.
I'm pleased to hear that.
It's a new sight. He scolds, and she thanks him.
That's why we say she's without peer. She sees things differently to others.
As much as it pleases me, I would be remiss if I didn't express the same concerns for our other students who are sleeping. Our other student who is sleeping.
Who? My eyes followed Akechi's stare, and at the other end of it was...
This isn't good. He set his eyes on Jack.
You're right that it's not good, but I'll admit to wanting to see how this plays out.
That boy is Jack. The way he stares out the window is quite usual for him.
That's what he wants others to think, but my eyes won't be fooled. I don't need to look at someone to know whether they're concentrating or not in class. I can sense it.
Sense it? Is that right?
This is but another reward gained from my studies.
I don't know how you can do that, because I can't.
And not only did he sleep through the lesson, but he's sleeping as we speak. I've more than a few choice words for him.
I pray this doesn't get ugly, but the odds of this being a civilized conversation aren't as favorable as I'd like them to be. My eyes followed Akechi as he made his way over to Jack's desk, but this only worked to distract me from an unexpected someone barreling in my direction.
Ah! Miss Whiteley! Run!
By the looks of it, Lupine had collected into his hands a pile of books from his desk. After which, I could only assume, he must have caught his foot on the legs of his chair, causing them to tumble graciously out of his grip and towards my head. Ah! All I could do was try to use my arms to protect myself. I braced for impact. This was certainly going to hurt.
Lupine, you ought to take more care with the Academy's property.
It was thanks to Akechi's quick thinking as he grabbed my arm that I was able to escape without being hit by a single one of them.
What an awful mess I've made of things. Are you both all right?
Yes, I'm well, Lupine. Thank you, Akechi. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stepped in. Whilst he was still supporting me, his gaze was dropped awkwardly towards the ground.
No. This was no thing.
Akechi? He seemed to lose the will to speak mid-sentence, and I noticed his gaze was fixed unmovingly on something. Confused, I followed his line of sight to discover what had his attention. Oh! I was at a loss for words. His hand just so happened to fall upon my bosom.
What the hell, Akechi? Did you think you could use all the confusion to...
Taking advantage of a woman whilst pretending to assist her is truly disgraceful. Strive and conquer indeed.
Don't say some licentious things.
Akechi jumped away as if he had been smacked by an invisible force.
I had no intention to... I mean...
Yes, Akechi? I was somewhat shaken by the whole experience, but by the look of it, not nearly to the same degree he was.
My most sincere apologies. What I did was beyond depraved. I still have much to learn. Please excuse me.
With that, he was gone before I could tell him it was all right.
Hold it, Akechi!
I expected better from him. There's no reason to lose his composure over something so asinine.
It's a bit more delicate than that. He's never so much as held his hands with a girl, so that must have been quite a shock to the system.
A shock is putting it mildly.
Still, touching her chest by accident like that is just not on.
Watson, would it trouble you if I asked that you not shout such things? I must confess to some embarrassment.
I didn't mean to.
I
mean,
can't apologize enough. All this came because of my clumsiness.
That point was never brought up for debate.
Hope you'll forgive him, Emily. He has his flaws, his stubbornness for one, so he has his good and bad days.
Kobayashi puffed out his cheeks and sighed.
But I'll vouch for his character time and time again. He's a good man. I swear on my life.
Oh, I know he's a good man. All this came about because he genuinely tried to help me. The results may have been unexpected, but his heart was in the right place, and I was grateful.
Too kind. Try and make friends with him, alright? I'll bet that he wants the same.
Kobayashi then left the classroom in pursuit of Akechi.
I have to pick the seat next to mine for all your jolly talk.
Oops, Jack, I didn't know you were awake.
Even I can't sleep for all that. No need to make a fuss over something so small.
I wouldn't call them small. I instinctively looked down at my chest. Perhaps they weren't the most developed in the country, but they weren't disappointing by any means.
I wasn't talking about that.
Ah, yes. A typical response that rang ever true to his character. I dare say even Akechi couldn't change his ways.
Really now? It's admirable they would come so far for their studies. I've heard Japan is a country full of modest, hard-working people. The way you speak to the efforts these two have made, however, makes me wonder if there is something special about them.
Special? Yes, that's a lovely way of putting it. I hope it doesn't take them long to feel at home here.
If I may offer some advice of my own on that front, try to get to know them better.
What do you mean?
Even the most capable of detectives wouldn't work to solve a case without knowing anything of the victim and the suspects. It's only by trying to understand how another person thinks that you can even begin to get closer to them.
I'm in awe, Pendleton. You can give smart advice once in a while.
I do more than once in a while, my lady. My lectures are filled with excellent advice for your benefit.
I couldn't agree more with you. If I want to know them, then the best way to go about it is to strike up a chat. There's no better way for two different cultures to understand one another. Thank you, Pendleton.
I suppose I'm pleased to have been of service.
Oh, I nearly forgot. There's something I wanted to ask.
Ask away.
What do the words licentious and depraved mean? Pendleton had been in the middle of preparing my tea, but his hand stopped midair.
Where did you hear those words, my lady?
It was at school. That's the most I can say.
I don't feel at all comfortable explaining either of those to you.
Are they both so truly distressing to explain?
Yes, I'm afraid so. Why not take this as an opportunity and ask those two exchange students? I'm sure they will know the answer. It'll give you something to talk about with them.
Now that's an idea. I resolved to greet them again the very next day. I had so very many things I wanted to ask. What does Japan like? What can you do there? What do you like to do? Whilst drinking the tea Pendleton had prepared especially for me, I sought and planned what I was going to ask tomorrow with fervor. Now, what should I do? Let's write to my diary. Perhaps I should write to my diary. What shall I write about? Let's write about Akechi. I think I'll write about Akechi today. Akechi is one of two new exchange students who came all the way from the Far East in order to study.
Who is she? She seems to have been watching us.
He's quite a serious person, with a strong sense of responsibility. He even puts his name forwards to be class representative on his first day of school. The room was speechless when he did it, but I have a feeling he's perfect for the position. He certainly has a talent for disciplining others when they need it.
My most sincere apologies. I did what was beyond depraved. I still have much to learn. Please excuse me.
He was to become the center of a particularly unfortunate incident later, but I hope we'll become fast friends. I'm feeling tired. I ought to go straight to sleep. I stood from the chair and made my way towards my bed. I heard a knock on my bedroom door. Come in.
Forgive my intrusion, my lady.
Pendleton entered the room. In his hands were a healthy number of documents. I could only assume they related to his investigation into my parents' murders. Steeling myself, I asked him to report his findings.
Well, things are beginning to look a little suspicious, to tell the truth.
How so? Pendleton cast his eyes downwards towards a photograph before continuing.
Here we have Baron Stanley. His life was lost in an accident.
Him too? First Viscount Quincy, and now Baron Stanley.
Indeed. His death came 2 years after that of your parents. As well as being part of the fund, he conducted voluntary activities of his own. He would often count on your mother, father, and their other friends, seeking help and advice. He proposed measures to the government for improving conditions in the slums and decreasing waste using neighboring countries as a model, but all did not end well. One night, after visiting a pub he frequented, he drunkenly fell into the river. His body was discovered in the Thames the next day. The following autopsy, however, found startlingly little water in his lungs.
I see. There's a chance that his death was no accident then.
That is correct. Still, Scotland Yard believes there to be no evidence of that, and is of the opinion that it was only that, an accident. I also wish to bring to your attention more on Viscount Quincy's circumstances before his death. His personal life had left him exhausted overmuch due to the failure of a mine in which he invested, and his parents becoming increasingly ill.
Oh. I felt just awful for him, but it was not as though I could do anything for him now. It was a terribly pointless feeling.
Next, we have Professor Randolph. His death was 7 years ago. He overdosed on elixir, which caused him to enter an overexcited state and jump from the 3rd floor of his flat, committing suicide. Rumor has it he started using several months before his death and developed an addiction.
What could have possessed him to do that? Pendleton turned to the next page of his collection of documents.
I fear I could not ascertain the reason, but there are a few mysteries surrounding his death.
Like what?
Well, the cause of death is cerebral contusion brought on by the fall. And yet, you see, it was discovered that a large amount of pressure was applied to his fractured cervix from a direction that isn't consistent with anything else relating to his death. The autopsy report concluded that both the direction of his neck fracture and the direction of the force which caused his head trauma don't match.
That's an intriguing find. Then his neck could have been broken before the fall?
Very perceptive. Before his death, he was said to have mentioned that his friends' deaths were more than mere coincidence a number of times at a chemist he frequented.
It must have been awful for him to live in that state. Still, at least that means I wasn't the only one who didn't believe my parents' deaths were an accident.
Indeed. He was quite famous in London as a professor, as it so happens. I went to hear him speak with your parents several times, and always walked away impressed. It's unfortunate that he stopped speaking publicly during the years before his death. He always appeared to be afraid of something.
Thank you for finding this out for me. You've done excellent work. He accepted my words with a perfect, modest smile. The more I learn of the people in that photograph dying under mysterious circumstances, the stronger I feel their deaths had something more to them. And they're all suffering from misfortune before their deaths too. It's all far too suspicious. I gulped. If they're all murders made out to be accidents or suicides, just like in the case of my parents, it's genuinely starting to look as if someone wanted everyone involved in this fund dead. With their deaths being separated by several years, I doubt many would suspect this to be a case of multiple murders, but I could not count myself amongst them.
I agree. There are too many little similarities between them.
If only we knew the truth. Might you prepare for me a list of the remaining people in this photo, Pendleton? I'd like you to investigate their safety for me.
As you wish, my lady.
After bowing to me, he departed the room. I couldn't help but feel as though his image clouded over slightly as he did. Testimony B. A collection of information gathered by Pendleton. Were my parents' friends' deaths a simple coincidence?